Ever been judged the second you walked into a room? The CEO was, until she made them regret it instantly. The glass doors of Brentwick National Bank slid open with a soft whoosh as Lisa Hargrove stepped inside. It had been a long day. Meetings, conference calls, back-to-back negotiations. Her brain was fried. All she wanted was to withdraw $50,000 in cash for an upcoming investment. Nothing unusual, nothing complicated. She adjusted her sleeveless beige blouse and ran a hand through her naturally curly hair, sighing as she approached the teller. The bank wasn't packed, just a few customers scattered at different counters. A security guard leaned against the far wall, eyes scanning the room lazily. Everything about this moment should have been routine. Lisa had banked here for years. Her company, Hargrove Capital Solutions, had multiple accounts with them, millions of dollars in deposits, regular transactions, a spotless record. Yet, the moment she stepped up to the counter, she could already sense something was off. The teller, a woman in her mid-50s with a stiff posture and sharp glasses, looked Lisa over before offering a tight-lipped smile. "How can I help you today?" Lisa placed her gold-embossed debit card and ID on the counter. "I need to make a withdrawal, $50,000 in cash." The teller blinked, a brief hesitation. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she glanced at Lisa's ID, then back at her face. "You want to withdraw? How much?" Lisa arched a brow. She wasn't in the mood for this. $50,000. She leaned in slightly. "From my business account. It's all there. Shouldn't take long." The teller's smile thinned. "One moment." Lisa exhaled, watching as the woman typed something in, then frowned. She didn't like that look. The look bank employees gave when they saw something that didn't add up. A minute passed, then two. The teller was still staring at the screen like it held the secrets of the universe. "Is there a problem?" Lisa asked, keeping her voice even. The teller glanced up, hesitating. "I just need to verify some information." And then, instead of proceeding with the transaction, the woman stood up and walked away, disappearing into an office behind the counter. Lisa tapped her nails against the glass surface. A few feet away, the security guard had straightened up, suddenly interested. Other tellers whispered to each other, throwing discreet glances in her direction. She had seen this before. Lisa wasn't just being delayed, she was being profiled, but she wasn't about to let this slide. Lisa's jaw tightened as she checked the time on her watch. 4 minutes had passed. No sign of the teller. No explanation. Just whispers and side glances. Her patience was wearing thin. She looked around the bank. A few customers had come and gone. A young man in a blue hoodie walked out with a paper envelope, probably just withdrew cash. An older woman at the far counter had just finished depositing a check. No delays. No extra verifications. Just her. She felt a presence near her. The security guard had moved closer, now standing just a few feet away, hands clasped in front of him, watching. Lisa took a slow breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "Excuse me," she called out to a different teller, a younger man with short, dark hair, who had just finished with another customer. He looked up, clearly startled. "Yes, ma'am?" Lisa gestured to the office where the first teller had disappeared. "I've been waiting for a while. Can you tell me what the holdup is?" The young teller shifted uncomfortably. I think she just needed to confirm something with management." "Confirm what? It's my account, my ID, my money. What's there to confirm?" He opened his mouth, but before he could answer, the original teller finally returned, walking briskly toward Lisa with a man trailing behind her. The man, late 40s, receding hairline, an air of self-importance in his stride, stopped beside the counter and folded his arms. "Ms. Hargrove, I'm Dennis Rowland, the branch manager. I understand you're trying to make a withdrawal?" Lisa eyed him carefully. Something in his tone wasn't right. "That's correct. $50,000 from my business account." Rowland tilted his head slightly, looking at her as if she had just claimed to own the bank itself. "And this is for?" Lisa narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me? I mean, what is the purpose of this withdrawal?" Lisa let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Since when do customers have to explain why they're taking out their own money?" The manager didn't flinch. "Large cash withdrawals sometimes raise red flags. It's a security measure. We have to ensure there's no suspicious activity." Lisa's stomach clenched. She had heard stories like this before, read about them, seen videos online. Now she was living it. Dennis, let's cut to the chase. I have an account here, a long-standing one. I've made withdrawals before, and I've never been questioned like this. Why am I suddenly being treated like I'm doing something illegal? Roland exchanged a glance with the teller, then sighed as if this was all just an inconvenience to him. Look, it's just protocol. We need to verify a few things before we can release those funds. Lisa folded her arms. Fine, verify them, but do it quickly. Roland hesitated, then nodded toward the teller. Run a fraud check on the account. Lisa stiffened. Fraud check? For what? The teller turned back to her computer and started typing. The security guard shifted again, moving another step closer. Lisa felt her pulse tick up, her patience hanging by a thread. But she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her rattled. They thought they had control of the situation. They were wrong. Lisa leaned against the counter, arms still crossed, watching the teller's fingers fly over the keyboard. The clicking sound felt louder than it should have. Behind her, she could sense the security guard standing even closer now. His presence wasn't subtle. He was waiting, as if expecting something to go wrong. She refused to give him the satisfaction. How long is this going to take? She asked, her tone sharp now. The teller didn't look up. Just a moment, ma'am. Lisa exhaled slowly. She had led multi-million-dollar negotiations with powerful investors, outmaneuvered boardroom rivals, and built an empire from the ground up. And now, she was being treated like a scammer in the very bank where she held millions. The teller suddenly stopped typing. The screen in front of her cast a faint glow on her face as she froze, eyes locked on something. Roland peered over her shoulder. Lisa noticed it immediately, the micro-expression, the tiny shift in his stance. Something was happening. What? Lisa pressed. What's the issue now? Roland hesitated before clearing his throat. There seems to be a discrepancy with your account. Lisa scoffed. Discrepancy? Be specific. Roland's expression remained neutral, but there was a smugness behind his eyes. Your withdrawal request has been flagged as potentially fraudulent. We'll need additional verification before proceeding. Lisa let out a short, humorless laugh. Let me get this straight. You're accusing me of fraud? On my own account? The teller's shoulders tensed. Ma'am, we're just following security protocols. No, you're not, Lisa cut in sharply. You're profiling me. I walked in here, presented my ID, my bank card, and my account information. Yet somehow, I'm suddenly a fraud risk? The tension in the air thickened. Other customers were starting to notice now. A middle-aged man standing in line was watching the exchange closely. A woman with a toddler kept glancing between Lisa and the manager, her brow furrowed. Lisa turned back to Roland, her voice calm but lethal. Tell me, Dennis, if I looked a little different, if I had walked in here wearing a suit and tie, would we be having this conversation? Roland's lips pressed into a thin line. That's not what this is about, Ms. Hargrove. Lisa held his gaze. Isn't it? Roland glanced at the security guard, then back at the teller. We'll need you to step aside while we make some calls. This could take some time. Lisa stared at him. Step aside. She had built an empire from nothing. She had shattered ceilings in the finance industry, a world where people like her were constantly underestimated. She had proven herself 1,000 times over, and yet, here she was, being told to step aside. She glanced down at the counter, at her gold-embossed bank card sitting untouched. Slowly, she picked it up, slipping it back into her wallet. Then she reached for her phone. You know what, Dennis? She said, voice smooth, controlled. You just made a huge mistake. Because Lisa Hargrove wasn't just any customer. She had the power to make sure they never forgot her name. Lisa's fingers moved fast across her phone screen. She wasn't going to argue with these people anymore. They'd already made up their minds about who they thought she was. They were about to learn exactly who she was. The call rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Lisa? Marcus, I need you to get on the line with Brenwick National's regional office. Now. Marcus didn't ask questions. He was her corporate attorney for a reason. Sharp, fast, and ruthless when necessary. What happened? Lisa's gaze flicked to Roland, who was watching her carefully now. I walked in to make a withdrawal, and suddenly I'm a fraud risk. They're refusing to release my money. A beat of silence. Then Marcus exhaled sharply. Say no more. I'm calling their legal department now. Stay put. Lisa hung up and slipped her phone back into her purse. Roland's smug confidence wavered just a little. Was that someone from your business? Lisa smiled, the kind of smile that wasn't friendly. That was my attorney, and he's about to have a very interesting conversation with your bosses. For the first time, Roland hesitated. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. The teller's hands were fidgeting slightly. Lisa could feel it, the shift. She wasn't the one on the defensive anymore. A few minutes ticked by. The bank was quieter now, as if the entire building could feel something was coming. Then, Roland's desk phone rang. He stiffened. Lisa said nothing, just watched as he slowly reached for the receiver. This is Roland. Silence. Then his expression changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes darted to Lisa, then to the teller, then back down to his desk. Lisa crossed her arms, waiting. Yes, I understand, sir, Roland finally muttered. Another pause. His face was losing color. Of course. I'll handle it immediately. He hung up, sat there for a second. His hands were gripping the edge of the desk now, like he was trying to keep his composure. Lisa raised a brow. Something wrong, Dennis? He looked up, and for the first time, he wasn't in control anymore. Miss Hargrove, I apologize for the misunderstanding. His voice was stiff, forced. Lisa tapped a manicured nail against the counter. A misunderstanding? That's what we're calling this? Roland's cheeks darkened. Your funds will be released immediately. If you'd like, we can offer you a private room while we finalize the withdrawal. Lisa let out a short laugh. Oh, now you want to offer me privacy? You didn't mind humiliating me in front of your entire staff a few minutes ago? Roland swallowed hard. Lisa took a step closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to process my withdrawal. Then I'm closing every single account I have with this bank. Roland's eyes widened slightly. Miss Hargrove, I assure you this is not our standard practice. It is when people like me walk in here, isn't it? Lisa's voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut. Roland had no response. Lisa tilted her head slightly. Do you know how much my company has deposited in this bank over the last 5 years? Roland didn't answer. Lisa smiled. $17 million. The teller visibly tensed. The security guard looked away, suddenly very interested in the floor. Lisa leaned in just a little closer. I wonder what your bosses will think when they realize you lost every single penny of that today. Roland paled. Lisa stepped back, adjusted her bag over her shoulder, and gave him one final look. Now, give me my money. Because Lisa Hargrove wasn't asking anymore. The atmosphere in the bank had shifted completely. The confidence Roland once carried was gone, replaced by an uneasy stiffness in his shoulders. The teller's fingers moved fast now, suddenly eager to complete the transaction that had taken them nearly an hour to process. Lisa stood perfectly still, watching, waiting. The security guard, who had been hovering so close just minutes ago, had stepped back, no longer watching her, no longer treating her like a problem that needed to be handled. Ms. Hargrove, the teller said finally, voice much softer than before, your withdrawal is ready. Lisa glanced at her name tag, Meredith. Probably had worked here for decades, probably never thought twice about people like Lisa until today. Meredith carefully slid the envelope across the counter, filled with 50 neatly stacked $1,000 bills. Lisa took her time, checked every bill, counted them one by one, not because she needed to, but because she wanted them to feel what it was like to be doubted, to be the one being watched. The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, she nodded. Looks right. Meredith forced a smile, but it barely hid the discomfort behind it. Lisa turned back to Roland. Now, let's talk about closing my accounts. Roland looked like he had just swallowed glass. Miss Hargrove, I understand your frustration, but I would like to personally assure you that this was... No, Lisa cut him off. She wasn't interested in whatever damage control script he was scrambling to put together. There's nothing you can say to fix this, but I will say this. Lisa tilted her head slightly, voice still calm, still in control. You might want to reconsider how you and your staff handle situations like this in the future, because next time, you might profile someone who doesn't have the power to fight back, and that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Roland didn't even try to argue. He knew she was right. Lisa turned toward the exit, money in hand, dignity intact, ready to walk away. But then, her phone buzzed. She checked the screen. Marcus, she answered. Lisa, The regional director just called me back. He wants to speak with you immediately. Lisa smirked. Put him through. And just like that, the damage control began. Lisa lifted her phone to her ear, stepping to the side as the bank's doors loomed just ahead. She could feel Roland watching her, the weight of his mistakes settling in his chest like a brick. Ms. Hargrove, a deep voice came through the speaker, polished, professional, and laced with urgency. This is William Drake, Regional Director of Brentwick National Bank. I just got off the phone with your attorney, and I want to personally apologize for the experience you had at our branch today. Lisa let the silence stretch, let him sit in the discomfort of his own words. An apology? She finally said, voice even but unimpressed. That's nice. But let's be honest, Mr. Drake. You're not calling because you're sorry. You're calling because you realized who I am. A pause. Lisa could almost hear him shifting in his seat. Ms. Hargrove, I can assure you this was an unfortunate miscommunication. Miscommunication? Lisa laughed softly, shaking her head. No, it was a choice. Your staff chose to assume I was suspicious, chose to treat me like I didn't belong in my own bank, and that choice just cost you a client. Drake exhaled sharply. I understand why you're upset, but please allow us to make this right. I'd be happy to personally oversee the handling of your accounts moving forward. Not interested, Lisa cut in smoothly. Silence. Roland, still standing nearby, visibly stiffened. He knew. They all knew. Lisa walked back toward the counter, placing her hand on the glass one last time. I have already spoken to my board. Effective immediately, Hargrove Capital Solutions will be closing all accounts with Brentwick National Bank. We'll be moving everything to an institution that actually values its clients. And don't worry, your team will be hearing from my legal department shortly. Have a great day, Mr. Drake. She hung up. Roland looked like he wanted to say something, anything, to salvage what was left. Lisa gave him nothing, just a final glance, one that made it clear. She had won. With that, she turned, stepped past the security guard, who no longer loomed near her, and walked out of the bank, her money in hand, their regret trailing behind her like a shadow. Never underestimate someone based on your own biases. Never assume you can treat someone unfairly and face no consequences. And most importantly, never judge a book by its cover, because sometimes that book owns the entire library. What would you have done in Lisa's situation? Have you ever experienced unfair treatment like this? Let's talk in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life lessons that hit hard.